Hey everyone, welcome back. A few days ago, I spoke with John, who recently passed his ASCP boards, and in our conversation, I asked him how did he prep for the exam, what type of material did he use to study for the ASCP, and what type of subjects did he see on his exam. So hopefully you can stay throughout the whole video so you can get the full experience, and I'll see you at the end of the video. Tell me, how does it feel after going through clinicals, the rotations, the 12 months you had in California, finally being able to take that exam? Like, how does it feel?
Feels like as soon as you finish that test, as soon as you walk out, it's different for everybody. But for me, I was sitting in my car for a good 10 minutes just screaming, screaming and just distributing information to all my friends that I had passed, just like super psyched. But yeah, and you kind of stay on that high. I mean, after the ASCP, you still got to do your California license, but that's a walk in the park. You know, it's just
I bet.
re-uploading, and there's a lot of steps until you're finally ready to apply to a job. I know the current place that I'm working at, they wouldn't even let me apply in advance until I had my California license. And so even though I was kind of doing the footwork to get it all set up with the right people, I still needed the California license. Because they're just going to reject your application, you know?
Of course.
Yeah.
I know there's like 5 or 3 top states that are very strict with their stuff. It's like California, New York, probably New Jersey, I think Texas. When I passed my ASCP, I was applying for jobs in Florida, and I was able to interview, and I was like, hey, listen, I still don't have my license, so do I have the job, yes or no? So it's kind of weird because you have all these other people trying to apply the same job, and you want that job, you want to start making that money. But luckily they were okay with it. They waited for like a month for me to get my license. With you, did you work for like a whole month? You were just kind of just focusing on your boards?
So the last month of my program, I pretty much just told my supervisor, hey, you know, I was a temporary employee, so I was only working like 1 week in a month anyways. I just needed the time to study. I just wanted to focus on studying and finishing strong. And they were absolutely okay with it. And that really helped me kind of finish everything that I needed to do at the hospital, get all my paperwork submitted along with the program, and then finally get ready for the actual ASCP exam.
So like walk me through like a day of studying. Like what time would you wake up? When would you have lunch, go to sleep? Like how was your day of studying looking like?
I think for like finishing my program, it would just be like on the weekends, as much as I can get done. I think the sweet spot for me was like 4 to 6 hours, because after that I kind of just lose focus and get distracted. Anything longer than that, you know, it's grueling, it's hard. You don't really retain a lot of information, but everybody's mileage is going to vary, you know. But after I'd finished the program in my clinical section, I think just that 6 hours, that sweet spot, like in the morning, if I could just get going, get my coffee going and just sit there, 6 hours was good enough for me.
Yeah. Did you like study at your place, or did you go to the library? Like what was your zone? Like what was your environment of studying?
You know, I really only studied at home. I can't really go to a place and study too effectively, simply because like I know people can go to like a Starbucks and just zone in for however long and just have everything there. But for me, it was easier to have all my comforts at home and just have my own room that's quiet, and I can just do what I need and just walk to the kitchen whenever I need a refreshment.
Just go grab something to eat, take a nap if you need it, go back to studying, eat something again, take a nap again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. During your studying, what were some of the materials that you used? Was it like lecture notes, flashcards, or did you use any other material that is out there?
So I think in preparation for the exam itself, I found out pretty quickly that my notes throughout the entire year, it was too much to kind of keep track of. And it was more geared towards my success on the clinical side versus actually knowing the information. And so the biggest study tool that I used was a program or website called LabCE. And so that's like the big one for me. It's like $75 a year, and it basically simulates every single section, questions you might see, explanations for the answer, and it tabulates all the data to see like, you missed this, you should probably, you can see how many tests you've done, and it'll show like a graph, and you can kind of see your weaknesses and whatnot. And for me, that was the easiest. Just getting a battery of test questions helped me kind of experience what it would be like, and that translated well towards the actual exam too.
Right.
So that's my number one. Number two would be like a medical lab science review by Robert Haar. It's like a book. It's
oh yeah, I think I used that one too.
Yeah, that's that one. Like $50 on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's good. You've got a bunch of questions. I like the format better than the BOC book, simply because you have the questions and the answers right next to it and an explanation. You don't have to like flip back and forth. That's my number two. Right before the exam, it was the purple and yellow book, the bottom line approach.
Oh, I remember that one.
That one I was like studying in the parking lot right before my exam. Like it's got goofy mnemonics and everything, but you can still remember it. It's super condensed. It's got like all your equations and everything that you need. I mean, those are like my top three. The last one I think is those review cards. A medical lab science quick review by Valerie Polanski.
Okay.
Another Amazon find. You can either get them the digital version or you can get the actual cards. They're not like note cards small. They're like giant cards. But I prefer the digital version. But yeah, those are my top three. I didn't use the flashcards so much, but they're just like a quick thing I could refer to. Like even in my clinical, I could refer to information quick there, but it wasn't as useful as studying for the exam.
Yeah, I can piggyback on you. I remember when I was studying for this exam, I also used all the information you just talked about, especially LabCE. I used LabCE for my weaknesses.
Yeah.
If I was weak on, let's say, chemistry or micro, I would straight out just focus on those subjects on LabCE and then refresh on the other things that I was really strong with, like on the other books that you were referencing. Bottom line approach was, I used that a lot. LabCE was just, hey, I'm weak over here. Let me focus on that with the LabCE simulation, like you were saying, just to get ready for that test. Because you sit down for like what, an hour, or what was it, an hour and a half?
So it's 100 questions, 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Okay.
And so yeah, when you go there, you take the test, and you're sitting with a bunch of other people. You're kind of in your own cubicle. You're taking the test. LabCE simulated that whole scenario the best. If you can kind of just right before the exam, or whenever you take the exam, just right before that, if you just, you can do the actual kind of computer adapted testing simulation in LabCE, and it's what you would expect, basically, exactly for the ASCP exam.
Right. Did you feel as you were answering these questions, they were getting difficult or easier? So
that's kind of the caveat of the computer adaptive testing. So from what I understand, and they have it listed in like the content guidelines on ASCP. So you get 100 questions, and it starts it off relatively easy. And then if you get it right, it'll increase the difficulty until you get it wrong.
Correct.
And then it kind of continues that process. And so it's you can kind of gauge it as you're taking the test, like, oh, this seems pretty straightforward, and then you get one really, really hard, and you're like, what am I doing here?
I remember I got some random I don't even remember, but it was random, like to the point where you just gotta guess it. It's like, I've never heard of this stuff, so I'm just gonna use all my knowledge just to answer this one specific question. And that's when I knew it was getting hard.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, it's getting harder. That means something good.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where, if you can kind of develop those test taking strategies with LabCE initially, that can help you when you're taking the actual exam, because it's not only knowing what is the right answer on the exam, but definitely recognizing what's wrong. Right. And if you kind of cross out certain things, that helps a lot. And in the exam itself, it'll give you the option to like flag something. And so you can kind of, towards the very end of the exam, it'll give you a chance to kind of review everything you flagged.
Yeah.
But simply because of the way the exam is formatted with a computer adaptive testing, you only really want to change it unless you know with absolute certainty that you're changing it to the correct answer. Because going through the exam, it's changing it as you go. So if you go back and change something, it kind of ruins the whole algorithm.
That's a really good perspective to put it. And I think I remember I probably flagged like 5 out of the 100,
Hmm.
but I flagged them, but I didn't change it because usually the first time you're always right.
Yeah.
You're always right on the first guess, and then you start thinking double guessing too much, you're gonna be wrong. So I do remember flagging at least 5, but I just looked at it. I said, you know what, it is what it is. I'm pretty sure it's right, so I just left it. But I never thought about that. If you flag it, it might change the algorithm. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't change the algorithm if you flag it. The algorithm kind of goes along as you take the test, but
Mhm.
it's not going to change it at the end of the test because everything's already laid out for you. You're
Yeah,
already through the 100 questions.
I see
But
what you
yeah, dude, you're lucky. Flagging only 5 questions is great. I flagged a lot.
mean.
Towards the end, I was like, what are all these? Like, what?
I well, because my mindset going into the boards exam was, you know what, you know, don't second guess yourself. Usually, if you answer the first time, that's the answer. Like, don't go second guessing yourself. So that was my mentality.
Yeah,
That's how I
exactly.
went into the exam room.
I think, yeah, that's kind of I share a similar mentality where like I've done the best that I can on that question, but if you flag it, you kind of introduce that nature of second guessing yourself.
Uh-huh.
And towards the end, you know, in my prerequisite classes, I would do that a lot. And after a few of them, I learned not just to go with your gut instinct. And
Right.
that's kind of like test taking strategy. That's what they tell you, kind of go with your gut instinct.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your different strategies on, textbook versus LabCE. What would you say is the heaviest subject on this exam? Was it all departments like chemistry, hematology, coag, blood bank, all in like one question, or was it kind of
I
sporadic?
think personally for me, I had a lot of blood banking questions, a lot of immunology and serology questions, and then being able to distinguish like images of cells and
Yeah.
like certain patterns in serology. Those were the ones I saw the most. And I think because of the way the algorithm plays, those might have been the ones I was missing more. But again, I'm not sure. Every person's test is going to vary. That's kind of what it was for me.
Yeah, I have the opportunity to talk to students who are rotating in the facilities. I like to talk to the students because, they're fresh out of school. They're like introduced to this new kind of like realm of work, and they're actually seeing what they've been practicing.
Yeah.
And I like to ask them, hey, how are you studying for the exam? Or like, what are your approaches? And they're like, yeah, there's so much to study. Or like, and then they'll ask me like, how did you do it? I was like, well, I really focus on my weaknesses. Like, and if I was weak on blood bank, I'll focus on that. You can't say, oh, just focus on chemistry or just focus on blood bank, because it's everything all together. And like you said, everyone has their exams laid out differently.
Mhm.
From what I remember, my stuff was like blood bank and chemistry. And you can say, well, I had serology and immunology. So basically, you just make sure you study all the subjects, and you feel competent in all the subjects.
Yeah, I think starting with, initially just taking a look at the ASCP guidelines, it's roughly like 20% of each of the big, subjects. And then you've got like
Right.
10% or so in lab operations and whatnot. If you start there and kind of focus your studying through that, and then you can kind of, like you said, use LabCE to kind of isolate your weaknesses, you should be in pretty good shape for the exam itself. And like if you're doing LabCE and you're getting like 75 of the 100 questions right in just the review mode, you're in a pretty good spot. And then I know like it sounds counterintuitive, but if you're like 50, 60 or above in the actual simulated mode, more likely than not, you're going to be in a good spot for the exam.
I do remember those numbers. And then last but not least, what would you recommend to your underclassmen? Since you already understand how everything works when it comes to the BOC, testing, studying, what would you recommend, and what would you tell your underclassmen who are wanting to be a CLS, wanting to take this career to the next level?
Definitely get support from anybody in the field, whether it's your friends or your colleagues. That support is really strong, and that will help you when you're not confident enough in yourself, and that'll kind of lift you up. As far as the test goes itself, it really helped me to use, I know at my test center, they had the noise canceling headphones.
Oh,
That I started the exam without them. And then as more people started filtering in and taking their own different exams, and not everybody's there to take the ASCP. So
right.
you've got a lot of people moving in and out. So I just put those on and kind of zoned in and took the exam. That helped me a lot. I think like when you're going through the exam, there's a tendency to kind of, when you're going towards the end, to just kind of click through it all. But you want to slow your pace down because you're going to have more than enough time to finish. I know when I took it, I still had well over an hour left.
Yeah.
Wow,
that was fast.
But it feels very fast, but that's because, you know, like you're taking a test, you're trying to remember everything that you studied. But just slowing down towards the end and making sure you're not rushing through questions. And then once you finally finish the exam, make sure you're not clicking through those windows, because towards the end, and everybody had told me this, is it's going to tell you whether you passed or you didn't. And if you just zoom through that, you're not going to know. You can miss it very easily. And so I'm very grateful for that knowledge, because otherwise I would have just zoomed through it, you know. But just having a support group, if you can, I was very fortunate enough to, at my site, to have been working with another student like half of the year, I would say, and just bouncing ideas off of one another and having each other's support and studying together really helps, because if you're able to teach another person, you're kind of reaching that knowledge level that you understand it enough to convey it to another person effectively. You're going to know it more if you're able to do that.
That's right.
And just in my case, just the LabCE was invaluable.
That's right. Really that's probably the best tip ever you can give someone else. If you can teach it to someone else, that means you totally get it. And, you know, in college, I would like to use those rooms that had whiteboards and just write out everything, and then have classmates that are just sitting down, like, hey, can I just go over this with you real quick and just teach you something, even though they already know what it is. I would actually use a whiteboard to write down the Krebs cycle, you know, starting from like glucose 6-phosphate all the way down to the Krebs cycle and whatnot. Yeah, it's the best. I think that's the best way to approach things, is to like teach it to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's next for you? What is next?
Putting out some job applications. That's pretty much the next step. I mean, you do all this work to get the job. So getting into a laboratory that you like and want to be there, and just understanding like the workflow and stuff, that's awesome. That's the best place you can be, you know. But yeah, that's the main goal.
Do you have any plans to continue education? Are you interested in specializing in any of the departments?
I don't know yet. I just want to get my feet wet. I mean, when you get your license, you're just a generalist, so you're kind of put wherever they need you.
Yeah.
That's
the way you learn.
Yeah, just getting as much experience as you can, then you can kind of zone in on where you like. But I don't know, man, not yet.
All right. I personally remember, because I took my state exam, my BOC here in Southern California. I think I had parked on the 5th level, and I walked towards my car, and you can see Pasadena Mountains, and I literally said, man, what's next? You know, like I had the itch to keep going and trying to figure out what was next. So hopefully, you know, people have the itch to keep going forward, whether it's, you know, getting higher education or specializing in a department and helping these facilities somewhere, somehow. That's probably like the best thing you can do as a CLS.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you work your way all the way up through the program and your prerequisites, and then you finally get your license, and then that's really just the door, and you kind of walk into it, and you've got so many different fields you can go into. It's not just a clinical lab. You've got all sorts of different avenues you can take, whether it's lab management or, you know, specializing in a certain department, or there's even like, you know, you've got like Stanford blood banking, where it's just, that's all they do. They're processing blood and testing it. Like there's so many different avenues you can take.
Yeah, and then you can also, I've been talking to classmates who I graduated with who are now working for, have you heard of Epic? It's a software. So there's different facilities in the States that use, the different list systems.
Yeah.
So this guy's working for Epic as an Epic analyst. He's working from home. He helps Epic troubleshoot certain situations in labs. I know another friend who works as a field engineer. Do you know what a field engineer is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he has a CLS license. I think the CLS personnel are probably the best people for field engineers just because they actually work with the instrumentation.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to work for like Siemens or Cepheid, you can apply to those different companies and work for them. So there, like you said, there's so many doors. This is just the first door that opens to many doors, many doors. Well, thanks for sharing your knowledge, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And good luck to you in the future.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for talking, man. Take care.
All right.
Thanks for watching the full conversation. If you found this video valuable, share it with a friend who will benefit from it. Don't forget to like, subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.